Don't be nervous, 'cause you can make me nervous.
Okay, I'm sorry.
All right. We're continuing our series with local authors.
Yes.
And today we have Angelita Gamble.
Yes.
So please introduce yourself and your work.
So my name is Angelita Gamble, and I am a local author. I recently published my book, Please Doesn't Mean Yes, in June of 2024.
That's this book right here?
Yes.
All right, let's hold that up.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So it's a book that is honestly about 12 years in the making. Yeah, I know.
12 years.
So I wrote it about 12 years ago when I was in my second or third year teaching. And it was a lesson that I was teaching my students at the time. And I can go more into, why I felt like it was important to do that. Mm-hmm. But I was teaching it to them and I said, I think everybody could benefit from this type of thing. I think I want to make this into a story.
Yeah.
And so I wrote it, and then it kind of sat on the shelf until I had the courage to really seek out an illustrator who could bring that story to visual life.
And it looks beautiful.
Yes.
It looks great.
The illustrator did an amazing job. Ilma Salman, it was a freelancer that I found on Upwork, but he did an amazing job in bringing that story to life. 12 years in the making, finally made it happen, but I've been talking about it for a while. Mm-hmm. Yes.
So let's start with you were a teacher.
Yes.
Start with that.
So started teaching in 2010. And I was an elementary school teacher, did that for 11 years. I've taught first grade, second grade, third grade. Third grade was my love. Yeah. But the last couple of years I was in the classroom, I was in first grade. So, teaching this lesson to young kids is possible. And I was very adamant about making sure that it was taught to young kids because you build those foundations when you're young. Yeah. You don't have to wait until you're older to do these kinds of things.
Absolutely.
So I was in the classroom for 11 years, and then I became an assistant principal. So I was an assistant principal for the last 3 years. Same thing, still taught those things, and I actually had to use it in practice with a discipline issue. Told my student, please does not mean yes. And they're like, yes, it does. I'm like, it doesn't. So, actually getting kids to understand the concept that just because you ask for something in a nice way, the answer is not always going to be yes. And you'd be surprised how many people, adults too, who think just because you ask for something, and I've said it kindly, I've used the word please, they expect the yes. And so I think it's just very important for people to understand that, one, you can say no, depending on the situation and, whatever it is you're trying to share or talk about. But then people have to also understand receiving a no. And what do you do with those emotions? How do you handle that in order to not lash out at the person who gave you the no?
Right.
Yeah.
So what about the jump to writing a book and then into more material?
Yeah. Can you ask that again? I'm sorry.
So, you made the jump into, I'm going to finally put out this book.
Yeah.
And then also extend the book.
Yeah. Right? So I can't be in all places, right? So I know that, I've taught the lesson, but in talking with other educators about this concept and what I was doing with my students, I started to notice that people had questions. And so they were like, well, how do you do that? How do you handle those conversations? And I don't always have a rule book for how that goes because each situation is different. Right. So, if we're talking about supplies in a classroom, well, if it's that child's personal supplies, then we're going to talk about the fact that they can say no.
Right.
But then how's that no handled? Are you singling out a person? Is it the school's material? There's lots of different factors that kind of play into those conversations, and you can't be there with everybody who wants to teach this lesson. So I said, well, how can I kind of put something together in a basic way that anybody could pick that up, whether it be a parent, homeschool teacher, public educator, who they could take this lesson, at least have a start. Right. So that's where the activity book came in, and it's more of like a educational workbook than an activity book. There are activities that are in there for kids, and you can make copies of that and have them work through things. There's like a mini board game in there that kind of gets them to kind of practice. What does it mean to say no, and what are the negative effects of that? But then I also included 5 instructional lessons in the back of each book. And so each of these workbooks is tailored towards K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I kind of leveled it out that way. So, K1's really talking about the sharing piece of it. And then when you get to 4, 5, we're talking about consent. So, what does it mean to give your consent? What does it mean to ask and wait for consent? And then especially in the grades, 4, 5 and higher, because this could apply to middle school and high school too, especially when you start talking about peer pressure, and just understanding your own personal boundaries, whether it be body boundaries. And you can do that with the younger grades too, but that comes up more when you get to middle school and high school.
I love that it's by grades too.
Yes.
So there's also levels to this where there's a trajectory. Where you can go and add to this. And there's levels to it when it comes to the kind of, words being used that relates better. That's awesome.
Yeah. I love that. So, like I said, it really stemmed from being in the classroom and watching, and I have nieces and nephews, and I'm the oldest of all my cousins and my siblings too. So when I heard people talking about sharing, and you'd hear it from parents and teachers too, kids would not want to share and then be told on, it's the tattling thing. So,
right.
Hey, I'm going to go tell on you because you're not sharing this. And what I heard was people being forced to share. So then I had questions. I've always asked a lot of questions when I was younger. My mom will tell you I was the why kid. So if I was told anything, I'm asking why.
Which I think is a good thing.
Yes, it's a very good thing. You should question. So I found myself wondering, well, why do they have to share if it's their thing? If it's my toy,
right?
Why do I have to share that? Why am I being forced to share that if I'm not comfortable doing so? So I started asking those questions a lot. And like I said, it came up in class. And so I kind of tested this out with my students. And what I found was they can understand the concept, but they have to be guided in understanding that. And I found them wanting to say no to certain things, but feeling like they couldn't. And we're really, the adults in their lives are the ones who teach them that. So I felt like this was so important. And like I said, it stems from, starts with sharing, basic, all the way up to body autonomy, making sure that you feel comfortable in spaces. And if you don't, saying that you don't and being okay in the fact that no is a complete sentence.
Right. Also, I love that, especially with school, when it comes to educators or teachers. I mean, what you're learning in school really is cemented in the brains. I mean, my favorite individuals growing up that had the biggest impact on me were my teachers.
Yeah.
Absolutely, especially my English teachers. And so you, with your educational background, having this, these important lessons, I think it's beautiful. It's a great thing.
Yeah. So, like I said, it was something that I felt was so important. And I hear people all the time, kind of ask me, well, what is this about? How can you, give these lessons to kids? And because these books kind of start, especially the workbooks, they start in kindergarten, people think you can't teach this to preschool. But you can. It all starts there, right? So the minute they start doing anything that's related to sharing or having to do any type of communal kind of things, you can start to have these conversations. They can understand it.
Yeah.
And
I think it is important to have these conversations at a younger age.
Yes.
And a lot of this information I did, cement or share with my daughter, and I've seen that growth within her.
Yeah.
So having a workbook, having the book there, I think is great to kind of have those foundations laid at a younger age. So you set up since preschool, starting from there. And then gradually you're making your way to 5th grade.
Yeah. So how old is your daughter?
6.
Okay.
Yeah, 6 turning 7.
Okay.
And the 3rd of June. So
yeah. And has she had any, experiences where she hasn't necessarily wanted to share?
Maybe not. I think my daughter's overly sharing.
Okay.
I think she shares a lot, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
In her class, there are kids that have, different disabilities or abilities, and her teachers always tell me that she's always sharing or helping, which is a good thing. I'd rather have that child than a child who's never sharing, doesn't want to help, doesn't want to support.
Right.
So I think that's a good thing. But I think that came with the amount of time, honestly, I spent with my daughter. Grabbing those books from the local library. Teaching those lessons. And I also started at a young age with why, I would say. Because that why is a deeper level of understanding.
Exactly.
That allows you to apply that to different aspects of life.
Yes.
And I've seen that, within her.
And like you're saying, the encouraging children to ask why. Sometimes I've seen this in schools too, where they're not encouraged to do those things. And I think that's a very old school mentality too, where, children are not supposed to question things. They're just supposed to take it at face value, and you do it because I told you to do this. that's not teaching our kids to think critically.
Yeah.
You know, they have to be able to ask questions. And the whole point of being with their parents or trusted adults or teachers is that it's a safe space to take risks.
Right.
You know, so like this is the place where I should be asking questions. This is the place where I should feel fully comfortable asking those things, because I know that the trusted adults that are around me are going to help me find the answers.
Yeah.
And whether they can answer them right there, or whether they, you know, encourage me to go look in a certain place, or, you know, direct me to a resource where I can find those answers for myself, then now you're getting them to kind of think critically, and then they want to share that information with you too.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. So you also have shirts as well?
I do. So this is new. So you guys are the first people to hear about this. But it's just some concepts that are in the book. So I have the theme, please doesn't mean yes. But then I also have, you know, what I stated before, which is no is a complete sentence. And I think that that's a concept that not only kids need to understand, but adults too. And I had to learn it for myself. I mean, I am so used to saying no and then feeling like I had to justify why I'm saying no, or give this whole detailed explanation about why I feel like I need to say no right now. And at the end of the day, no is a complete sentence. If I don't want to do it, I don't want to do it. If I don't want to be touched, I don't want to be touched. If I don't want to hug you, I don't have to hug you. And so I just think it's just a simple phrase, but a nice reminder to ourselves, kind of like an affirmation where it's no is a complete sentence. I don't have to give you all of that. No, if I want to, I can, but I don't have to.
Absolutely. So, I mean, teachers or educators can use these books.
Yes.
But even parents. You know,
even
summer's
parents.
coming, so applying these lessons at home during summer will be perfect.
Yeah. And like I said, it is an activity book. So, you know, inside I do include just some justifications in the front that kind of explain, you know, why this is important. So it kind of gives an introduction to what the book is about. You know, what the workbook is about. And then on the following page, you know, some ideas too about like why consent is important, and you know, why does this matter? Why are we even talking about this? And then inside there are some cool things that, you know, kids can do with the ideas, some phrases. They can create their own boundary comics, and I really want them to kind of be comfortable with it and have fun with it, right? Because it's not this serious thing where, you know, I have to only be focused on this, or I have to be in this, you know, serious state of mind in order to talk about these things. You can have fun, you know, and it should be a fun thing, and you practice it and you know, make it a part of your daily habits. But in the back, I did want to make sure that educators and parents too, because I mean, I've been in the school system for a while. Even though I started teaching in 2010, I grew up in education. Like, I taught Sunday school when I was younger. I was in youth groups. I've worked with kids for over 20 years. So I also understand that the jargon that's in schools that educators use sometimes is not the same jargon that you're going to use with your kids at home, but it means the same. So I tried to simplify it in a way that anybody could pick this up and teach it to whatever young people you're trying to get this concept across to. So, like I said, it is tailored towards the age groups, just to kind of like give that wide range, because what you teach a kindergartner and the way you explain it is going to be very different than what you would teach a 10-year-old. So I tried to make sure to include some of those things, but
I think it was very wise to have the educational levels so different. I think that's great for the books, for sure. Tell me about Sincere Creations.
So, started out as, you know, just a way for me to kind of house everything, because I am an author, but I also do some advocacy work, you know, advocating for parents and children who have special needs, or just any type of educational need. And then also doing some like consulting and coaching. So it was a way for me to kind of house all of those things together in what I love to do as an educator. So Sincere Creations is just a way, it is literally its word, right? So I'm sincerely creating a space to share the educational knowledge that I've built up over time with people who are seeking out those things. And so any way that I can help, I love to. Like, this is my passion. It's my purpose in life, is to be an educator to those that are around me and to just share in the knowledge building of life.
So who are the ideal individuals who reach out to you?
So It's a wide range, honestly. Like, I have parents who reach out to me who want more information on how to teach this concept to their kids. And then I also have like parents and or kids, whether they're older kids. Sometimes I've mentored some older students, and they're just wanting to understand like how to navigate the educational space. Like, if they're wanting to take themselves into higher education, like, what do I need to do with that? Or if I want to make a career shift, but I don't really know how to use my skills towards this other thing, like, how can I do that? So, you know, I have those coaching conversations and mentor conversations with people all the time. And I'm really looking for, what do you love? What do you love about what you do? What do you love about the things that you want to put out in the world? And how can we take that and merge that into the space that you want for education, or just for your life in general? So I have people reach out to me in that regard. And then with, you know, the advocacy work, I've been an advocate for a couple of people who, they're parents and they love their kids and they're doing everything they can, but the jargon, right? So you go into these educational spaces where you're talking about special education and you don't know what people are saying, and I've had parents tell me, well, I don't want to ask too many questions because I don't want to prolong the meeting. Or, you know, I don't want to ask this because they explained it, but I don't want to seem like I don't all the way understand it still. So my job in those spaces is to make sure that they understand, because a part of that process is having informed consent. And you can't have informed consent if you don't know what's going on. So, and I was a huge advocate for that when I was in an assistant principal, because I ran special education as a part of my role. And so in those meetings, I would make sure before a parent left that you understand what we're saying. You understand what's going on. If you don't, please call me, because I want to talk to you before you sign any document. And so I'm very big on that. So the parents that I've worked with, sometimes it's just explaining the grading system. It's explaining, you know, the resources and the accommodations that, you know, are being suggested to their child or for their child. It's explaining some of the, you know, jargon like least restrictive environment or free and appropriate education that gets put into some of that document. Like, what does that mean? So a lot of it is just explaining and getting them to understand the process. And then how can we work together? What is it that you're wanting for your child? What is it that you feel your child needs? Can you tell me a little bit about them? And then I can kind of guide them through that process. And I've attended meetings with people too, to kind of hear what the school is experiencing, what the parents are experiencing, how can we bridge the gap? And in some of those meetings as well, things will be said, and because I know the parent, I know that term you just used, I know what it means. They don't know what it means. So let me pause you and explain this to them so they can understand in the meeting what's being said. So that's my job when I do that advocacy work.
So what kind of projects or events are coming up?
Okay, so I have a festival that I'm actually doing in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's the Darkness Rising Live 8 in NC. So it's like a block party that's happening for mental health. And so I am going to be one of the vendors here advocating for my book. So I'll be there vending for that in North Carolina on Saturday. But in the outside of that, you know, just kind of really wanting to focus on getting this out to schools. I did an author visit in March at my former school, where I was able to go back, and I actually did do a presentation for grades K-5. So I did 3 presentations, K1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm hopeful to be able to do more of that. Like I said, I really am huge on allowing people to see that this concept, one, it's needed. And everybody I've talked to understands that. And they're like, oh my gosh, this is such an important lesson. So I really want to get out there and go to more schools and talk to more kids to get them to understand it as well. And then, you know, doing some coaching and mentoring sessions for adults and educators who would love to understand how to teach this concept. And really giving them some tools to be able to apply that for themselves, because it's not about me. It's about getting the information and the message out there, and people doing that in a way that fits them best.
So local schools, local PTAs can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And they can reach out to me on my website. So it's sincerecreationsllc.com. And I do have a contact information on there. And so they can just message me, email me. I would love to come out. And then, you know, share this message with anybody who's interested.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So any social media want to plug in, other websites?
Yeah, so I have Sincere Creation on Instagram. It's Sincere Creations LLC. So everything has Sincere Creations LLC on it.
Right.
So I have that for my Instagram, and more information will be shared on there about the upcoming events that are happening and upcoming projects that are happening. Like I said, I just launched the merchandise or the shirts. But there'll be more things, like I said, coaching sessions and just some workshops and stuff that'll be coming up within the next year. And I do have another book. So in the back.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yes. It plugs in the next book, which is Not Everyone Earns Trophies. So that book will actually be dropping in 2026.
Wow.
So currently it's in its illustration phase.
We should do an interview for that.
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful. Anything else you want to
add? Just that, when you're working with your children or students or whoever, or even just adult peers, this is something that can really be done at any time, right? Like as we grow, you should be growing, you should be changing, you should be evolving just as a human being, as a living thing.
Right.
And so I just think that this is a lesson that really can happen at any time. Mm-hmm. But the earlier you can teach your kids this in their foundational stages, I think the easier it'll be for them to apply it across dimensions, right? Like across different types of settings. And it just gives them their voice. Like it allows them to understand that my voice matters, how I feel matters, and I don't have to put that aside for someone else's manners. Mm-hmm. I don't have to put that aside in order to make someone else feel good, because you're not going to make everybody feel good, period. Like you're just not going to please everybody. That's just the way of life. But you can still be kind. I can say no in a kind way. And the workbooks kind of talk about that, like how you don't have to say no aggressively. I can say no kindly, and I have to understand how to receive a no kindly, and not, lash out at somebody because I didn't get my way. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. It's a pleasure having you.
Thank you.
And for you to come out. We have to do this again.
Yes.
For sure. But yeah, thank you.
Thank you.